This book is The White Cat by Robert Sansucci. Once, not so very long ago, a king called his 3 sons together and said, "I wish to turn over my crown to one of you and retire to my estate in the country. When I do, I want a pretty little dog to keep me company. Whichever of you brings me the prettiest little dog shall be king." The princes were surprised by this, but they agreed to do their father's plan and vowed to return in exactly 1 year. Then they said goodbye, and each set out on a different road. The youngest son, who was the handsomest and smartest of the 3, bought a new dog every day, and sold it as soon as he found a prettier one. One evening, as he rode through a forest, a terrifying thunderstorm came up. Rain fell in torrents, soaking him to the skin. Soon he had lost his way in the darkness. He had been riding along, miserable and cold, for hours, when he saw a bright red light shining through the trees. He urged his horse toward it, and soon found himself at the entrance to a palace. The gate was made of polished gold, studded with radiant rubies. A gold cat's paw hung from the gate on a chain of diamonds. The prince pulled the chain and heard a bell ringing far inside the palace. A moment later, the door opened. He saw a dozen hands floating in the air, each holding a torch. The prince hesitated, then grasped his sword and entered the marble hall. On the walls hung portraits of famous cats: Puss in Boots, Cleopatra's cat, the King of Cats, and countless others. A sweet voice whispered, "Do not be afraid. You are welcome here." The mysterious hands led him past suites of splendidly furnished rooms. At last they stopped. They moved a large armchair close to the hearth, then flung their torches into the fireplace, where a warm fire began to burn. Then the hands brought the prince towels to dry himself and dressed him in the grandest clothes he had ever seen. After this, they led him to a magnificent dining hall. The table was set for 2. As the prince seated himself, several cats filed in. One held a music book, some carried small guitars, one held a baton. Under the conductor's direction, they began to mew and draw their claws across the strings of guitars. As they played, a group of cats and monkeys entered and danced an elegant ballet. When the performance was over, the prince applauded loudly. As he did so, a small figure about 20 inches tall, covered from head to foot by a black veil, entered the room and sat opposite him. She was escorted by 2 cats in black livery, who stood at attention on either side of her. When the little creature threw back her veil, the prince saw a lovely little white cat. She looked very young and very sad. "King's son, I welcome you with pleasure," she mewed, so sweetly that his heart was touched. "Mistress Cat, I thank you, but surely you are no ordinary cat, with your gift of speech and your splendid castle." She thanked him politely, but did not answer his question. Then she asked her servants to bring supper. They dined on stewed pigeons, braised fish, meat pie, and berries with cream for dessert. After supper, the white cat wished the prince a good night. He was led to a magnificent bedroom with a bed so soft that he immediately fell asleep. The prince stayed with the white cat for a long time. They played chess, drank milk punch, listened to the palace musicians, and talked late into the night. But when he asked the white cat questions about herself, she said, "I cannot tell you anything." She seemed so sad when she said it that he did not question her again. Nearly a year had passed when the prince remembered his father's request. "I have only 3 weeks to find the pretty little dog my father wants to return home. My whole fortune depends on it. What shall I do?" The white cat handed him an acorn. "This contains the loveliest little dog in all the world. Hold the acorn to your ear, and you'll hear it barking." The prince did so, and indeed he heard a tiny bark. "You must promise that you will only open the acorn in the presence of your father," said the white cat. I give you this in return for your friendship and good company." The prince was overjoyed. He gave his promise and thanked the white cat 1,000 times. Then he set off for home. He was the first of the 3 brothers to return to the castle. When his elder brothers arrived, they all went together to see their father. The 2 elder brothers each carried a small basket holding a beautiful little dog. Both dogs were exquisite, and the king found it difficult to choose. But the youngest prince settled the matter when he opened the acorn. There, lying on a bit of folded silk, was a tiny dog. It was so small it could fit through the king's ring, yet it was so full of energy and danced on its tiny legs to the delight of everyone. The king was charmed by it, and declared that his youngest son had brought him the most beautiful dog in the world. But his elder sons grumbled so much that the king announced a second contest. "I will give you 1 year," he said, "to find a piece of linen so fine that it can pass through the eye of the thinnest needle." The three brothers set out, each in a different direction. The youngest prince journeyed once again to the castle of the White Cat. This time, the White Cat was in the field, riding a greyhound and wearing a soldier's helmet. She greeted the prince warmly, then raised a little horn and sounded it several times. 500 soldier cats mounted on greyhounds formed in ranks upon the field. "We are at war with the horrible rats from an island across the sea," she said. "They are pillaging my lands and driving my subjects from their homes. Will you help us?" The prince agreed, and he marched into battle with the 500 cats. After a day of hard fighting, the cats, led by the prince and the White Cat, pushed the rats back to the beaches. The rats quickly took to the sea in boats made of eggshells. Despite their great fear of the water, the cats put to sea in vessels made of cork. With her tiny gold sword grasped tightly in one paw, the White Cat captained her navy from the lead ship. The prince, who was too large to sail with him, stayed on shore and cheered his friends on. The battle was long and ferocious, but at last the White Cat and her fleet defeated the rats and sent them swimming toward their distant island home.